close to 75% of apartments that are for sale in New York City are not actually condominiums. Requires its prospective owners to have liquid funds of at least $100 million. In recent years, buyers have started to gravitate towards more vibrant neighborhoods. It's unlikely that we'll see any addition of affordable housing without large government subsidies. Hi everyone, this is Alan Rosinski of Metro Manhattan Office Space. At the beginning of March, the conversion of unused commercial space into apartments gained support in Albany, the New York State capital, and a city with a population of close to 100,000 people around 130 miles north of Manhattan. Both Governor Hochul and the current mayor of New York City, Eric Adams, are big supporters of real estate development. Eric Adams, being a landlord himself, has famously declared, "Build, baby, build," at a conference shortly after being elected. In May of this year, he addressed a real estate forum at The Real Deal by saying that what oil is to Texas, real estate is to New York. Perhaps he's right. Kathy Hochul, on the other hand, has raised a record $21.7 million during her election campaign, with a significant portion of her backing coming from some of the biggest names in New York City's real estate industry. It's clear that New York City's real estate ambitions are far from finished, and in today's video we will explore what may happen to Park Avenue and how it may be primed to become another Billionaires Row here in Manhattan. When it comes to commercial real estate in New York City, the elephant in the room is the persistently high vacancy rates of commercial office buildings. Despite increased leasing activity in the last year, this remains a problem for New York's landlords, and they're going to have to find creative solutions. However, high commercial vacancies are not unique to New York City. All top 10 U.S. metro areas continue to deal with elevated vacancy rates as businesses embrace remote work and downsize their offices. New York City is not even the worst of them. Vacancies in the cities of Dallas and Houston in Texas are twice as high compared to New York. When you do the math, the actual post-pandemic loss of commercial tenants in New York City is very similar to that of other major American cities, hovering around 4%. So why does any of this matter? Well, instead of waiting for tenants to reappear, the Real Estate Board of New York, better known as REBNY, has started pitching the idea of residential conversions back in December of last year. According to its study, in Manhattan alone, there's 140 million square feet of Class B and Class C office space that currently faces decreased demand. Let me provide you with a bit of context here. Why the decreased demand? Since the start of the pandemic, Class B and Class C buildings have generally become less desirable, and there are many reasons for that. For instance, it's difficult to get home-acclimated employees to agree to work in person in an outdated, less attractive, or less versatile office environment. This is especially true for buildings that lack modern amenities or don't have a convenient location for easy commuting. Before the pandemic, there would have been no choice. Today, things are different. Being forced to work in an office is seen as a big ask by employees who have gotten used to working remotely, and it puts pressure on New York City's landlords to modernize their properties. However, instead of having to absorb huge renovation costs, landlords of smaller Class B and Class C office buildings could potentially redevelop their buildings into residential condominiums to fill the ever-present need for housing in Manhattan. Given the headaches and unpredictability of operating a commercial property, this would make economic sense, but this is obviously contingent on the zoning laws allowing conversion. But first, let's talk about something that many of my viewers may not know. Other than rental units, close to 75% of apartments that are for sale in New York City are not actually condominiums, like in other parts of the country. Instead, they are co-ops, and the difference between them is very significant. When you buy a co-op, you don't actually buy your apartment. Instead, you are buying shares in a corporation that owns the building. The number of your shares depends on the size of your apartment, and buying the shares gives you the right to occupy a unit in the building. Owning an apartment in this manner can give you a 20% discount or more compared to buying a similarly sized condo, all other things being equal. This is a unique advantage of co-ops. However, the approval process for a co-op building can be very long and grueling. Co-ops are positioned for long-term occupancy and social membership as part of an exclusive community. Prospective owners are highly scrutinized as though they are joining an elite club, and the co-op board can deny membership for any reason under the sun. The process is regulated only by what is known as a business judgment rule for corporations, and that is a very wide net. You could get rejected based on race, gender, age, income, religion, anything the board deems as a bad fit for their co-op community. As you can imagine, prospective buyers run into these issues all the time, and the board is under no obligation to provide reasons for their denial. For exceptionally wealthy buyers, the idea of having to provide extensive financial disclosures is highly unappealing as well. Co-op buildings also don't make for very good investment properties. Resale is difficult, and there are typically many restrictions when it comes to renovation, with many items requiring explicit board approval. The buildings themselves have many rules that must be followed, which can be equally restrictive, depending on the preferred lifestyle of the tenant. And so, despite their higher price, condominium apartments end up being quite attractive for buyers who either struggle to qualify for co-ops, buyers looking for a less restrictive property ownership experience in New York City, or buyers who prefer to keep their financial matters to themselves. Since office to residential conversions are usually condos, they provide a welcome alternative for a city dominated by co-ops. Now let's talk about one of the most famous residential neighborhoods in Manhattan, Billionaires Row. Located on the south side of Central Park, Billionaires Row sits roughly between Columbus Circle and Park Avenue. It's home to some famous locations such as Carnegie Hall, the Plaza Hotel, the Russian Tea Room, and several other exclusive venues. Some of the buildings that make up Billionaires Row include 111 West 57th Street, known as the world's skinniest skyscraper, 157 West 57th Street, also known as 157, arguably the building behind the area's reputation as Billionaires Row, 225 West 57th Street, known as Central Park Tower, the tallest residential building in New York City, 220 Central Park South, known for the most expensive apartment ever sold in the U.S. at $238 million, 53 West 53rd Street, next to the Museum of Modern Art, and 432 Park Avenue, a prominent skyscraper that was the tallest residential tower in New York City until 2019. There are several other similarly priced skyscrapers that add to the prestige and opulence of the area as well. Above 32nd Street, Park Avenue stands out as a 140 feet wide boulevard, which is very uncommon in densely packed Manhattan. For a long time in New York City's history, Park Avenue has had a status of luxury and exclusivity. In the 1920s, Park Avenue, from Grand Central to 96th Street, saw extensive construction of luxury apartment buildings, most of which are co-ops today. A good example of this is 740 Park Avenue, which is an understated-looking co-op building that requires its prospective owners to have liquid funds of at least $100 million in order to qualify for residence. John D. Rockefeller had an apartment inside this building, which consisted of about 20,000 square feet of space divided into 37 rooms. This gives you an idea of the opulence you can expect to find in Upper East Side Park Avenue cooperative apartments. What's interesting is that in recent years, buyers have started to gravitate towards more vibrant neighborhoods. For instance, Soho or Flatiron. Such a change in preference can be explained in several ways. First, there has been a significant shift in social culture there is a change in what people consider good quality and what they consider prestigious. Now it's not only exclusivity and price, but it's also lifestyle and convenience. Consider this. If you walk down Park Avenue on the Upper East Side, there are many blocks without any cafes or restaurants. Forget gyms, grocery stores, nightclubs, or even libraries. This is a sharp contrast with any other major avenue in Manhattan, where your typical walk to the nearest cafe is less than 5 minutes. That's also due to zoning laws. Park Avenue is zoned strictly for residential use from 60th to 124th Street. That makes for a long walk to the nearest coffee shop. Given the lack of flexibility that co-op buildings are known for, along with a lack of convenience at the residential-only portions of Park Avenue, what ends up standing out for future development of luxury residential properties is Park Avenue in the 50s. This stretch of Park Avenue currently has many upscale office buildings, such as the recently redeveloped 425 Park Avenue. 16 floors of that building are occupied by Citadel, which you may remember is one of the two financial firms that invested $2.75 billion into Melvin Capital, bailing them out when they lost half of their worth to the GameStop short squeeze in January of 2021. A lot of wealth is concentrated in this part of Park Avenue, and this area is adjacent to two of the most prestigious residential neighborhoods in the United States, Park Avenue on the Upper East Side and Billionaires Row on West 57th Street. The 1,400-foot tall 432 Park Avenue is already a part of this neighborhood. The transformation that took over 20 years on 57th Street could happen again on Park Avenue in the 50s. Unlike Park Avenue on the Upper East Side, this area has many good retail and restaurant options, which fits well into modern cultural trends. It's also a short walk to major office buildings in Midtown Manhattan. For instance, the newly constructed One Vanderbilt is easily within walking distance, certainly much closer than anything on the Upper East Side. Residents on Park Avenue in the 50s would also get quick access to Grand Central Terminal, allowing them easy access to nearby towns. One residential conversion that is already taking place is the Waldorf Astoria Hotel, which first opened in its original form in 1893 and was known as one of the most luxurious hotels in the world, being the first to have electricity and a phone in every room. It was then rebuilt in 1931, and today it's being converted into a luxury condominium building comprising 375 residences in total, with studio apartments starting at $1.7 million and 4-bedroom units starting at $18.5 million. Given that Park Avenue next to Billionaires Row represents an upscale neighborhood, it's unlikely that we'll see any addition of affordable housing without large government subsidies. But even then, affordable units in such locations are more an exception than a rule. That's exactly what we've seen before in other programs, such as the NYC housing lottery. What is much more likely to happen is that we'll have a new Billionaires Row in Midtown East. Regardless of the future possibilities, these changes are not going to happen overnight. Landlords can't simply terminate a commercial tenant's lease because they intend to redevelop their building. On top of that, the duration of commercial leases is often 10 years or longer. Sometimes commercial leases have demolition clauses or cancellation clauses, but this is not generally the case in larger commercial buildings, although it is quite common in boutique office buildings. The bottom line is that landlords can't throw tenants out of a building before their leases expire. In addition, many financially successful firms have continued to pay for spaces they barely used throughout the pandemic. While it is difficult to estimate how many office buildings in Midtown East are actually available for conversion right now, the conversion of only a few of them would have the capacity to radically change the character of that neighborhood. A good example of that is West 57th Street. Most of the original buildings on the street have remained intact. However, just a few conversions ended up making a huge difference, permanently elevating the neighborhood's appeal to the ultra-wealthy. Suddenly, a nondescript street has become known as Billionaires Row. The same may happen to Park Avenue in due course. If you have any thoughts or questions about this topic, please let me know in the comments below. I always welcome your feedback. Thanks for watching. If you found this content interesting or helpful, I'd be happy if you subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can always find me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is @Metro Manhattan. Until the next time.